Good morning. Today I'm going to tell you about Barra Resources and our Mount Thirsty cobalt nickel project located just near Norseman. It's an advanced, high-grade, low capex and undervalued cobalt nickel project. It's a very strategic metal, cobalt, and we're getting a lot of strong interest from Tier 1 multinational companies who are eager to secure sustainable supply. I'll tell you about our dual commodity strategy. In fact, Barra was listed in the year 2000 on the back of some fabulous gold assets around Coolgardie, and in fact we had some positive drilling results from Burbank's announced just yesterday, and I'll run you through those. But most importantly, we're located in Western Australia, obviously a fabulous jurisdiction, a great place to go mining, and in fact right there in the centre of mining in Western Australia, where our projects, for example, in Coolgardie, we're only 5 minutes from the town of Coolgardie there. So let's start with commodity prices. Now, obviously, it's been a tough 12 months for the cobalt price environment. As we sit here today, cobalt's trading at about US $35,000 per tonne. Now, that's actually a historical low in real terms. Now, I'll run you through some of the fundamentals of supply and demand around cobalt, and I'm sure by the end of the presentation you'll agree with me that we're set for a major re-rating of the cobalt price. Our project has also got nickel credits as well. It's important to note that the Mount Thirsty project is a true cobalt project with nickel credits. It's not a nickel project with cobalt credits. It's around about an 80-20 split by value. But those nickel credits are still important to us, and in fact nickel is now, many market commentators are highlighting nickel as being the commodity to watch. That's driven by a few factors. Look, warehouse levels have dropped off. They've halved over the last 12 months in nickel. Very strong growth in stainless steel use, 3 to 4% year on year for stainless steel growth. And then, of course, nickel is also a big component of your batteries as well. So for both of those commodities, we can see exceptional demand and tight supply. So let's talk about electric vehicles, and I know you all would have heard a lot about electric vehicles, but I've got a few facts and figures I want to point out here, and in particular to talk about the electric vehicles being real. They're upon us, they're coming, and absolutely unstoppable. In fact, they're already cheaper than a petrol vehicle in some jurisdictions after subsidies. Yes, the sticker price is higher. I think Scott Morrison told us the other day it's about $28,000 more to buy an electric car on the sticker price. But once you factor in the maintenance costs and the operating costs and so forth, they are actually cheaper on a total cost of ownership basis. And how's that been achieved? Well, it's that amazing drop in battery unit costs. From 2010, batteries were costing around about $1,000 US per kilowatt hour. They're now dropping below $200 and reaching that point where price parity is now occurring. People were previously concerned about the range anxiety associated with driving an electric car, but they're being addressed as well. The data you see there is they're the vehicles approved to be sold in China, and just over the last 2 years the range of those vehicles has increased from around about 200 kilometres up towards 350 kilometres, driven by that improved battery technology. So let's talk a little bit more about what's happening up in China. It is the world's largest car market by far, together with the USA not far behind. And the government there has set very strong policy. They're targeting 12% EVs by 2020 and 100% by 2040. And in fact, of that 25 million vehicles sold in China in 2017, if we now look in Q3 2018, 5% of all electric vehicles actually sold were electric vehicles. Now, this may be a little bit foreign to us sitting here in Sydney. There's probably a few Teslas running around. But up in China, these are brand names that many of us haven't heard about, but it's real and it's coming. So where does cobalt fit into the equation? Well, cobalt is an essential ingredient in lithium-ion batteries. What cobalt provides to those batteries is energy density, and it provides thermal stability. One of the other uses for cobalt is actually in jet aircraft turbine blades. You imagine the heat extremes that a jet aircraft engine has to endure. It's the cobalt alloys that allow that to occur. For those same reasons, cobalt provides that energy density, it provides that thermal stability to stop your batteries catching fire. But given cobalt is very rare, only 130,000 tonnes is the size of the market, there will need to be some thrifting away from cobalt. So there are battery technologies being developed that are seeing the proportion of cobalt in the battery reduce in the cathode, reduced from 20% down towards 10%. But even with that adoption of that new technology, the demand is still exponential. So on the supply side, it's a perfect storm. You've got the cobalt supply, the metal is very scarce. 99% of all cobalt is actually produced as a byproduct of nickel and copper mining. To get new supply onto the market, you actually need improved nickel and copper prices to drive that new production. In the nickel space in particular, a lot of the nickel is tied up in nickel laterites that require high pressure acid leaching and typically $1 to $2 billion of capital costs to get those mines up and running. 70% of all cobalt is sourced from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and that's not really a healthy place for any market to exist, to have all of your eggs in one basket. And indeed, the history of cobalt supply, there's been a number of supply shocks which could easily occur again. And in fact, battery manufacturers, your Apples and your Samsungs and so forth, they're all seeking to demonstrate a secure and sustainable supply chain, and in cobalt, it's nowhere else more important than in cobalt. So the solution that I put to you today is the Mount Thirsty Cobalt Nickel Project. Fabulous location, of course in Western Australia, only 16 kilometres from the town of Norseman. That's Highway 1 running straight past our project, only 4 k's from our project, and along that infrastructure corridor you've got everything you may need to start a mining project. There's a railway, heavy haul railway, rail, gas, water, town, fibre optic, and indeed the Shire of Norseman are very, very eager to see our workforce accommodated within the town, either residentially or fly in, fly out. The project's a 50-50 joint venture with Conoco, another ASX listed company, and our values and aspirations for the project are very closely aligned. So over the summer we've been progressing our pre-feasibility study on the project, and we've had tremendous success on a couple of fronts, and there's more to come. Firstly, on the mineral resource, we've upgraded our mineral resource. We've got it from JORC 2004 inferred up to JORC 2012 indicated. Now that's a really important step for us. That gives us that credibility that we need, and particularly when I get to the partnering side of our project, the types of companies that are looking to invest in this project do require these boxes all to be ticked, and we're working through that process very diligently. It'll enable at the end of the pre-feasibility study to be eligible for an ore reserve, and that's our intention. The cobalt grade is roughly double that of a typical nickel laterite in Western Australia. It's a very high grade resource. It's flat lying, low strip ratio, and most importantly, we can get at the cobalt at very low capital costs, which I'll run you through now. So this is the most technical slide in the presentation. Apologies for that, but it's an important part of the story. What makes Mount Thirsty unique? Well, the fact is that Mount Thirsty is an oxide deposit, and Mother Nature has done some of the leaching for us. There's been some secondary leaching that's gone through, and a lot of the cobalt now exists in a manganese oxide mineral called absolane. It's that mineral absolane that we can leach with sulphur dioxide at atmospheric pressure. And you can see most of the cobalt lives in the absolane, and a little bit of the nickel lives in the absolane. In our scoping study, we were able to easily demonstrate that with sulphur dioxide, which is very easy to make, we'll just import elemental sulphur pellets through the Port of Esperance, truck them to site, burn them in air, and for a $212 million capex, as estimated in our scoping study, we can very easily leach that cobalt and nickel in the absolane. But we knew coming into the pre-feasibility study that that's where the opportunity lay. Without going down the high pressure acid leach route, could we get more of that cobalt and nickel? We thought that we would need to go down the addition of acid route to get that. We thought that we'd have to go down the beneficiation route to get that, all of which are expensive pathways. But what we actually found, with careful control of our reagents through the duration of a 24-hour leach, we were able to tackle some of that metal tied up in the cobalt and nickel. And just this morning, I'm very pleased to announce that we have replicated those results at the bulk scale. So semi-continuous processing plant tests using a 50 kilo sample size. We're now getting 84% cobalt extraction and 31% nickel extraction. Now, I can't overstate the significance of that. No additional cost, same reagents, just better technical control, and that's all cash that will come out straight out of the bottom line of the project economics. So our value chain, look, we're looking to make a mixed sulphide product, which is an intermediary product. We're not going to take it all the way to batteries, all the way to metal, or all the way to cobalt sulphate. We don't see ourselves wearing white lab coats out the back of Norseman. We're going to take it to this mixed sulphide product, and that's quite a strategic choice. One, it'll capture 80% of the revenue, but two, that particular product is of great interest to a number of multinational firms, some of which, in fact, there's 3 potential operations within Western Australia who could take that product. So despite the fact that 90% of cobalt ends up in China in battery, and half of that in batteries, we do actually have a number of solutions for the project within Western Australia. So look, let's not forget about the gold assets. Barra was founded off the back of our gold assets in the year 2000, and they're located right there in Coolgardie. In fact, our geologist can log the core, and then 5 minutes later she's home cooking dinner for her family in Coolgardie. You just can't understand how convenient it is both for the exploration and the development of these projects. We've got a strategy to build up towards 500,000 ounces ahead of mining, and we think that's a value-adding step. We don't necessarily have to go mining. We could go and do small-scale mining. In fact, Barra's done that on at least 3 occasions in the past. But we think it's a value-adding strategy just to build up those resources. And in fact, just yesterday, we announced some additional gold drilling results I'll run you through. But there's a bit happening in Coolgardie. Some of the big players are moving in. Northern Star picked up the South Cow Lops off Westgold. You've had Intamin and McPherson's merge and put in a bid for Focus's assets, which wholly surround our project, for $40 million, and that's just going through due diligence and execution. So Burbank's been mined since the 1880s. 420,000 ounces has come out of Burbank's over that time. We've got a resource. We've built that up over the last 2 years up to 125,000 ounces, and our geologists have set ourselves an exploration target that aligns with our strategy of moving up towards 500,000 ounces of gold. So here's our drilling results. This was announced just yesterday. We did a pretty modest air core program out there, just 99 air core holes, and straight away got some fabulous hits. None of this ground is in our current resource statement, but that's our intent now, is to move forward to resource estimation based on these results. Very shallow. Air core drilling only drills to blade refusal, so these holes are ranging from 50 to 100 metres depth. Obviously the question is what's underneath these oxide blowouts. These may well present short-term mining opportunities. That's not our strategy, but it has served Barra well in the past to be able to dip into these little deposits to get a bit of cash out of the ground rather than having to tap shareholders. So we'll move forward towards a mineral resource, and we're very confident we'll get a little open pittable resource out of that work. So coming back to our main project, to Mount Thirsty, the Mount Thirsty Cobalt Nickel project. Look, we've split the pre-feasibility study into 3 phases, and we're just nearing the completion of phase 2. There's metallurgical test work ongoing at the lab as we speak. But the 3rd phase is currently before the Mount Thirsty joint venture for approval, and that'll cover off the mine planning, where we think there's a heap of value to be had. It'll cover off the hydrogeological drilling just to firm up that water source. We're very confident the water's there. We just need to document the quality for potential partners, do the tailings test work, and then move on to the capital cost estimation and so forth. And by doing it in this fashion, we're going to align our pre-feasibility study. Our vision is that our pre-feasibility study will be pushed into the market in an environment of rising cobalt and nickel prices, and also in lockstep with a potential partner. discussions with several multinational companies, and they all like Mount Thirsty, but they all identify the pre-feasibility study as the investment catalyst to come on board. Thank you very much for your attention, and very happy to take your questions at the booth right out the front. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.